So as I talk about my fears and talk about the fears and phobias, the top 100 in the world, I'm going to carry on. I spoke about the fear of love, and I'm going to talk about the fear of intimacy, and then the next one will be the fear of commitment. So we're going to talk about the fear of intimacy phobia, which is called Amphiphosmobia, and it's number 19 in the list of my top 100. So the fear of intimacy phobia is known by several other names. Amphiphosmophobia, which is the fear of being touched. This is something I'm going to be talking about with people in a few weeks' time to reiterate about my talks about OCD, as well as philosphobia, which is the fear of love, which we spoke about as of yesterday. I spoke about. So, as the name indicates, the person suffering with the fear of intimacy phobia dreads intimacy shared between lovers or other close relationships with parents, siblings, and friends. Since most close relationships are based on deep emotional bonds, the person suffering this fear is unable to share a meaningful association with any person. So we have this with sometimes some children, they don't like to be touched. And I think, again, this also is about appropriation. I think it's also about spacing, about distancing, working that out. And it can be to do with many different things. But anyway, what is the cause of this fear of intimacy? So the abandonment and engulfment are two main factors are likely to cause the fear of intimacy. The sufferer is likely to fear getting intimate with a partner, thinking they would leave eventually. This is in case of the fear of engulfment, the individual dreads losing their individuality, or owing to the relationship's constraints. Generally speaking, the roots of the fear of intimacy are embedded in one's childhood. So I would say, from a hypnotherapist, I would say about 70% of people who've got the issues of, actually I'd say it's actually higher than that, about 95% have an issue in childhood, which actually is, with this, it's painful relationships in one's adulthood can lead to such a phobia. So, for example, this can be seeing their parents divorce, this could be seeing they've had relationships or they've seen relationships of people who have failed. Also, if they're young as teenagers and they've had their heart broken, that can also lead into adulthood. Again, this is why so many people need therapy, because if you are hurt and you then go on to do relationships and you cause hurt to other people, then you actually are not any better. And the person who was the actual person who caused them to be the victim. So, what are the causes of aphosphobia, or fear of intimacy? So we talked about this, the idea of this abandonment and so forth. And then also the result of the phobic tends to draw in a partner towards oneself, only to eventually push them away. As a result, the relationship is filled with friction that in turn affects the physical intimacy between two individuals. And in some cases, more individuals, because if it's a group of people or whatever that is, that can also be that sometimes they have a fear of intimacy not with their partner, but actually with their children. Because if they have been abused as children, then they're worried that they'll become an abuser like their parents or their family member or so forth. This actually happens quite a lot. It happens with multiple families. So again, people coming up with that, it works in only certain ethnicity groups. It doesn't. It happens in all families. So again, people need to get rid of that stupid stereotype they have in their head. So also, clinical psychologists also blame tumultuous relationships between parents, owing to extramarital affairs or either parent's part, for the fear of intimacy phobia in a child or an adult. Emotional, physical, or sexual abuse victims are also likely to suffer this, and it's difficult for them to trust anyone enough to get emotionally or physically intimate with. And this is actually something even in the spiritual community of people who become yoga teachers and so forth. That's why so many of them can't have relationships, because they've had so many issues in childhood or growing up, or because they were involved in a culture of dependency, whether that's drugs, drink, alcohol, gambling, pornography, whatever that is. And this is why there's always this issue with that, because they always wonder, and also this is why celebrities actually have this issue of intimacy, because they're always worried, are people in love with them for their celebrity or actually in love with them for the person? So as much as people think rich and poor people don't have these issues, they do. And it's equal in that respect. So the symptoms of the fear of intimacy. So there's several symptoms.